Hello, everybody.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is very exciting.
Oh, please turn on your cameras if you would, so I can see your faces. I love to see your faces. It's not a requirement, but I know that in my classes, everybody's great about turning on their cameras so that I can see you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So everyone, my name is Bethany Dixon. Some of you have seen me in the resume workshop. And today, Georgina and I are going to be co-hosting this workshop. I will be starting with a little bit about cover letters. And then Georgina is going to be doing some wonderful work with you on interviews. So by the end of this workshop, you will know about all the main components for a job application in North America, and specifically in Canada. So you already did resumes if you were there. And if you have any questions about that, you can also ask follow-up on that. And then we'll do a little on cover letters, and then Georgina will take over for interviews. I don't know, Allison or Ceci, did you want to say anything before I get started? No?
Okay, really, just thank you to Bethany and Georgina for hosting this for us. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone gets to learn so much about applying to jobs in Canada.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Awesome, great. So if everybody could please open the chat. I'm going to be asking you a couple questions, and the nice thing about the chat is we don't have to wait for everybody to unmute and say things. You can all say them at the same time. So what I'd like to know from you in the chat as we begin is, what do you know about cover letters so far? If you don't know anything, you can say, I don't know anything yet, or nothing. If you know something, you can put in something you know about what it is. But I want to hear from everyone, what do you know already? So that I know where we're starting from, and then I can explain more. So if you can open that chat and let me know, what do you know already about a cover letter when you are applying for jobs? And also, by the way, your answers help me to know that you're here, because if I can't see you, then the way that you tell me that you're here is by putting in some answer. And again, it's fine to say, I don't know, never heard of cover letters. Okay, so Georgina says that they're very important. That's what she knows. Good. Okay, we have somebody saying, I don't know anything yet. That's great. If you don't know, then you're in the right place to learn. Okay, anybody else? I know that one person is here in addition to Georgina and the people I can see. Okay, Anne's also saying, I don't know. Okay, we have a good comment. They're necessary for a job. Iris says nothing yet. Okay, Corinne also says, I don't know. Thank you for saying that. It's really helpful for me to know, okay, where are we starting from? Again, this is the reason that you're here. Excellent. Okay, so remember, anytime I ask a question, it's great to hear from everyone if you're able. Let me go ahead. Yes, okay, I'm seeing some good answers. So Helen says you need to show your capability. Yes, absolutely. And Rachel says it's kind of an introduction of yourself. Absolutely. You are so right. It's the first thing that your employer is going to read even before your resume, and then before they meet you at the interview, if they give you an interview. The cover letter is the very first thing. So Rachel is correct. That is a kind of introduction to yourself. So I'm going to start to screen share, and let's see how well this works. So give me 1 second, sorry. Okay. So Georgina or anybody, can you give me a thumbs up if it's showing properly and full screen? Yeah, thank you. Okay. So cover letters specifically, we've already done what you already know. So as I was just saying, the cover letter is the first document that your employer sees. And just like Rachel said, it's a chance to introduce yourself and also to show your enthusiasm for this specific job. So you're looking at the job description, whatever job you're applying for, and you're going to show why you're enthusiastic about it and why you're a good fit. It's only 1 page long. So good news, you don't have to spend 5 pages writing a long letter. In fact, you shouldn't spend that much. You only want 1 page. We talked a little bit about length last time, but can you open the chat again and tell me, why do you think it should be only 1 page long? Give me your reasons. If an employer is reading your introduction, why should it be only 1 page? Yes, Rachel, very good. It should be brief. Good. I want to see if I hear from a few more people too. It should be brief. What are some reasons that it should be brief? Why would your employer not want to, or prospective employer, not want to read 5 pages? Yes, Iris, absolutely. The employer could get bored if it's too long. Absolutely. Pete says they're going to skim it quickly. Yes, absolutely. They are in a hurry because probably they got thousands of applications for this job, or at least hundreds, depending on the job. And so they don't have a lot of time. Yes, the employer doesn't have time to be patient. Yes, exactly. They might be a patient person, but they're so busy they have to read this many in 1 hour, then they don't have time to read 5 pages or even 2 pages. So just 1 for your cover letter. Excellent reasons. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let me go back to this. So for the format of your, what do you put on that page? There's going to be a short opening paragraph, then about 2 middle paragraphs. Sometimes some people split it in 3, but usually 2 middle paragraphs, a short closing paragraph, and then you're going to sign off. I'll show you in a minute. You're going to restate some of the information on the resume, but go in depth. So maybe you look at your resume, you say, which of my experiences are closest to what this job does or what this job requires? And then you pick just those and you go in more depth in your cover letter to explain those, to maybe like give them more of a storytelling experience, because your resume is so brief, just bullet points. I did this, I have this education, this, but your cover letter is a little bit more in depth, just about the most important experiences to get them interested, and then they'll read your resume for more information. Okay. So here are some bullet points overall. The cover letter is a letter to your employer. So it's like an email that you would actually send to them. So you say, dear Mr. or Ms. or Dr. or whatever they are, if you know their name and then their last name. Or in some cases for co-op, you say, dear recruiter. So it's a letter. It is submitted with the resume. The employer reads it before they read the resume, usually. As we said, it shows enthusiasm for the job. So it's about the job more than the resume. The resume is just about you and what you've done. The cover letter connects it more to the job. And then it gives more detail than the resume about just a few of the experiences. So that's an overview. Oops, that happened twice. So now I'm going to switch my screen share to show you a sample and then a template. The sample is like an example of what somebody already has written, and the template is what you can fill in with your own information. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, put that in the chat or unmute yourself. So. Sorry, this always happens with screen sharing in Zoom for me. Let's see if I can get this to actually load. There we go. All right, so here is a sample written that I've changed the names and the address and the phone number because I wouldn't want to actually show you somebody's personal information, but they have allowed me to use their actual cover letter. So everything personal, even the date has been changed, but everything else is the same so that you can see what a real cover letter looks like. So this part is the applicant's name. Again, not the real one. This is their address. This is their phone number. And this is their UWaterloo email address. So if you do end up doing co-op, you should definitely use your UW email address. Even if you don't do co-op, you can still use your UWaterloo address when you're applying because they can reach you there. It's up to you. But for co-op, it must be the UWaterloo one. Then there's a date for when it's being sent. So this example, the way I set it up was in 2014. And then it is applying for the job. So this is the person who they're writing to. And by the way, this is a job for a pilot. So it's an example of a pilot applying to a job and writing a cover letter. So, dear Mr. Dobchuk, I wish to apply for a position as first officer at Canberra Air. First officer is the name of the job. That's one of the two pilots that flies a plane. Canberra Air is the name of the airline. So in your first sentence, you want to say what the position is that you're applying for. So maybe for you in math, maybe you want to be the position of data analyst or risk assessor or whatever it is that you're actually going to be doing. That's what you say. And then the name of the company. So whatever company you're applying for, you name it there. Then you say something about yourself that makes you excited about their job. For you, it would be something about math. For this person, they're talking about the company's mission. So this is an airline that works internationally. So this person says, growing up in Tanzania and Costa Rica has given me an interest in exploring the globe. And as a result, Canboric's international and varied operations are uniquely attractive to me. So again, they're saying, why am I interested? And something that sets you apart. This person has been in different countries. I enjoy a fast-paced, varied, and challenging work environment, and I'm confident that my critical decision-making skills and proactive can-do attitude would be an asset to the operation. So saying some of the things about their skills and how those would be relevant. Notice that this is the shortest paragraph. So it's mostly just 4 lines and a couple more words. So you want your first one to be specific. What are you applying for? What sets you apart? Why are you excited about the job? Very brief. Then each of these 2 sections is going to be about one experience. The first one about one experience, the second one about another experience. You don't absolutely have to do that, but that's what I highly recommend. So here, this person starts with talking about their strengths. One of my greatest strengths as a pilot is prioritizing safety while promoting efficiency, which I developed through my internships as a glider tow pilot over the past 2 summers. So that's the specific experience, and all of this is going to talk about what they did and how that prepares them for this job. Then here, they mention specific skills, my energy management and situational awareness, those are skills, so let's make those blue, have been honed by my participation in cross-country soaring competitions. So that's the experience. And then talking more about what they've done in that case. Here, let's go back to the skills. Prioritizing safety, promoting efficiency. So in that first sentence of each paragraph, you're going to name some key skills that are needed for the job and one experience. And then tell some details of how that experience showed those skills. And same here, other skills, one experience, give some details. Then at the end, you restate your interest. Sometimes you might say that you've included your resume so they'll look at it, and you thank them for their time. And then you almost always end with the word sincerely. That's just a very easy formal way to end. And then your full name again. All right, so that's a really quick overview. I want to hear any questions you have before I say a couple more things about that. So please either feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. What questions do you have about this cover letter? I'll give you a minute to think, and I will see if I mute myself for that. So think about it for a second, see if you can think of any questions. I know it might seem like an awkward silence, but I don't feel awkward about it. So just think and say, what would you like to ask about your own cover letter, about why it's set up that way, anything you want to know about the cover letter. Okay, so far, thank you. I'm seeing some very good questions. Excellent. Okay, so Iris says, when it is sent to the company, is it an email or a PDF file? That's a great question. So actually, there's no right answer for that because it depends on the application. So if you're applying for co-op, then it will be a PDF. So co-op has a place where you can actually upload your cover letter, and you will definitely do it via PDF, just like you also upload your resume, and it will tell you, put the cover letter here, put the resume here. So for co-op, there's a very specific system. The others will depend on where you're applying. So a lot of other places, not just Waterloo Works, also have a place to upload. So if there's ever an upload option, you're going to do it via PDF. But in a few cases, actually the one I just showed you, that was being sent directly to somebody via an email. So it could have been written as an email. So yeah, great question. Very good question. Most of the time, yeah, definitely send it as a PDF or upload it. But once in a while, you can send it as an email. Great question, Iris. Anybody else have questions? How to send it, how to write it, why that example showed the way it did? Okay, if you're still thinking or if you're still writing, please go ahead and put that in. I do want to see those questions. If not, if you do open the chat, you'll see that I put in a template. So the sample is what somebody already did, as I said. The template is what you can fill in. So if you'd like to open that chat and download the template, you're going to be able to keep that. I'm not going to be giving you the sample to keep because that's somebody's personal writing about their actual experience, even if I change their name. So I don't share that, but I do share a template that you can fill in. So if you'd like to open that, I'm also going to screen share what that looks like, so you know kind of how to use it. All right, so the template, if you open it, will look like this. Basically, this is something where you need to put in your own information instead of what's written here. So where it says student name, you put your name. So let's say I'm the applicant. I'm going to put my name right there. Where it says this, 123 University Avenue West, I'm going to put my own address. So for where I'm living. So let's say that I'm living in residence at Renison. Then I would put the actual address where I'm living or where I can receive mail. So if that's the case, I would put 240 Westmount Road North. And then I would fill this in as well. That's in Waterloo, Ontario. And then I'd put in the postal code, which I don't actually remember for Renison, but you would put that in there. And then the date for when you're sending it. So let's say you're applying today. It would be the 10th of August, or you could say August 10th. It doesn't matter too much the order. Oops, it's the 11th, isn't it? Huh. And then 2021. And then this word human resources, you can keep that because that's the area of any company that usually receives the applications, unless you know of somewhere else it's going. Then let's say you guys are applying for a data analyst job at an insurance company. So let's maybe say Canada Life. That's one of the insurance companies here. Canada Life. And then you need to find where their address is. I don't know Canada Life's address, so I would just highlight it to remind myself to go back and find their actual address and put that in. Then I need to find who I'm writing for. If I really don't know who I'm writing for and I cannot find the person and they haven't said it on the job description, then in some cases you put dear recruiter. Then you, as we just said in the example, you want to name the position you're applying to. So I'm excited to be applying for the position of data. Let's say it's called a junior data analyst. Maybe that's a specific position. So again, Canada Life is the name of the company. Junior data analyst is the name of this position that I'm just using as an example. And then again, you show why you're interested and a brief statement of your passion for the job and why you would be good for it. Then you choose one thing that you've done before in something related to data analysis, sorry, and then show how that would help you on the job. The next one, another experience, show how that would help you on the job. And then finish up here and sincerely learning. So you can keep this, save it, and if you ever need to write a cover letter, you can literally use the same exact format, so you don't have to worry about the placement and the bold and the space and all of that. You have it done, and then you just have to fill in your actual information for that job. All right. So that's what I wanted to give you a sense of. And I'm actually very interested, before we end, to hear from anyone else, Allison, Georgina, Ceci. Do you guys have any experiences with writing a cover letter? Any thoughts of what has gone well for you when you wrote a cover letter? If anybody wants to share, feel free. If not, no pressure, of course, but it's nice to hear different people's experiences of writing these cover letters.
Yeah, so I haven't written too many in my life just because I wasn't a part of co-op, so it wasn't really something that I had to do. But the few times that I have written them for jobs on campus, specifically, they were very difficult to write to begin with. I think just because the flow of them feels a little bit awkward to be talking about like your personal experience and trying to hype that up as much as you need to, and picking out just one or two very specific items to share. So something that a mistake that I made in the past was putting too many things in my cover letter. So I would go through my resume and think, oh, I have all of these experiences. I need to have an example from each one. That is not the case at all. They will not read it. They do not care. So just one or two experiences, I think, is a really great tip that Bethany shared today.
If I could add to that, Allison, I agree completely. Honing in on one or two things is very important. And when you're trying to think about what to look for, what to tell them about, look at the job description, okay? Because they've decided what they are looking for. So you want to look at how they describe the job and then think about yourself. Take a look at your resume and see how you can match those things together, and then tell them just a little bit about it. You don't have to tell them all about it because you'll be doing that in the interview, you hope. But just tell them that, yes, those things that you said are important in this job, I have them. So we're good.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. I don't know, Ceci, do you want to add anything on that?
I guess Georgina just answered my question, because that was, like Allison said, when I first started writing cover letters, one of the big mistakes was like, oh, I have all these qualities, right? So I'm going to put all of them and just talk about them. And it will turn out to be like huge paragraphs of a lot of experience. And sometimes it might be confusing too, because you're like talking about so many things at the same time. So my question to you was going to be like, how do you like advise students to choose what skills you want to actually showcase in your cover letter, right? Because if you have more than 2 skills that match the job, how do you know which ones are better to talk about?
That's an amazing question. Thank you, Ceci. That's so helpful. So that's actually probably one of the biggest skills, is knowing what do I include? And there are a couple things that I think about. As Georgina and Ceci both said, of course, you want it to be related to the job description. So that's the first thing. If it's not on the job description, then you wouldn't include that at all. So maybe as a co-op student or like a junior person, an example of a skill that's usually not there is leadership. So it might be great that you're a leader, and I'm sure most of you to get into UW had leadership positions in high school. But for a junior position, you're not usually going to be put in charge of a team, right? Because you're just coming in to help the team. So that's one thing. If it's not on the job description, don't put it in. And that can be hard for people because they're like, oh, but I'm a really good leader. And it's true. It's great that you're a good leader, but just pick what's on the job description. So that's the first part. But as Sissy said, sometimes or usually you have more than just 2 of the things on the job description. So then how do you choose? That's when it becomes specific to the job position. And I would say for you, all of you are in math. So pick your skills that are the most mathematical. Because almost everybody has communication skills of some kind or teamwork skills. And yes, it's good that you have those and you can show them. But if you are actually wanting to be a data analyst, you need to show what you've done with data analysis, if you have any. And that's obviously just one example. So there are many other math jobs. But if it's for something math related, show what you've done in that area of math. Even if you do want to show communication and teamwork, which is also important, show it in a technical context if you can. So maybe you say, I worked on this math project with 3 others and we solved this, or we did this math group competition and we arranged this and got a 3rd place or 1st place or something. That's within a math context, but showing your communication and your teamwork. So know that if it is a math position you're applying for, they want to see your math. And so connect everything you're saying to exactly that technical part they want you to do. Of course, not all of you will always want a math position. Maybe you want a part-time position while you're studying that's in something else. Maybe you just want to work in a restaurant or some part-time job. If that's the case, then think about what do they need there? Have you ever worked in an actual restaurant before? Or have you done maybe iBASE rep or something where you had to come up with ideas and present them that you might be able to do when you're presenting to a customer? This is why this is good food. So think about yourself. What would I be doing in the job? And how can I really closely connect my experiences to that? So that's how I would choose. I would say, which are the closest from this resume, which are the closest to the job, and then use those. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on how you would choose it. Yeah, so it is hard. It's very hard to select, but you really do want to connect it to whichever job you're doing. And for the cover letter, only pick the ones that are most connected, and the resume can be a little bit more general, even though you still use the keywords. Okay. Very, very good. Allison.
Sorry, if you just have 2 seconds. I know like when you're applying for so many different jobs, it feels like it's too much to go back and review and edit your cover letter and your resume for each one, but definitely take that time. I had a friend who was just applying to a bunch of jobs and not thinking, and he never changed the line about like who he was writing to or the company within his cover letter because he forgot to edit them. Definitely take a minute to go through and edit and reread your cover letter and resume before hitting submit on every job application.
Thank you, Allison. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I'm actually going to show you guys. If you write a draft cover letter, what I do is I keep a reference cover letter. So there are parts of your cover letter that maybe you don't have to change. Let's say you want to apply for 5 different data and analysis jobs. Some parts, like the middle parts, could stay the same. But as Allison said, the part where it is which thing you're applying for, and even the date that you're applying, if it's on different weeks, those need to change. So what you can do is actually save a reference version and even highlight the parts that need to be changed so you remember. So let's look again at that sample. So let's say that this person, a lot of these middle parts are actually about what they need for piloting in a lot of different situations. So they could use this for many, many piloting applications. And they did. I know that because this is somebody that I know. But obviously, they're going to change who they're writing for. So let's say you use a different color to say, I have to change this. Or maybe if let's see, I'll take away this highlighting because it was just to show you the parts. So here, let's say I put yellow highlighting for the things I have to change. So I have to change the name. I have to change the date because also if you use an old one, like if they see 2014, either they think you're not paying attention or they think you're reusing a cover letter. So there You don't need to change this, right? Because that's still your name, your address, unless you've moved, your contact information. Unless that changes, you can leave it the same. So I don't highlight that. But this, and then of course, as Allison just said, you have to say, change the name of the company and the name of what you're applying for. And sometimes, often, that first part of why you're interested also changes because you might have different reasons for applying for the job. I would make that blue because it depends. Maybe your reason is similar if their companies are similar, but at least the name has to change. So see how easy that is. Sometimes you don't have to edit your entire thing. You just have to change the date, the name, what you're applying for, and then possibly also that beginning of why you're interested. And then the rest, if it's a very similar job, that could stay the same. Great points. Thank you so much, Allison. All right, well, without further ado, I want to give this over to Georgina to talk about what happens next. If they like your cover letter, if they like your resume, that means they will offer you an interview. So what do you do when you get to your interview?
Okay, everybody, I am just going to pull up some slides here that we can take a look at. Give me a moment here. All right, yes, so it's an exciting time. This will stop others sharing screen. Do you want to continue? I hope that's okay with everybody else. I will take over the screen for a little while. And I will also move away the chat. So everyone, if you have a question, do you mind turning on your mic and just interrupt me, okay? So, job interviews. It's exciting, right? So, you applied for the job. You have a fantastic resume. You worked really hard on the cover letter. You've now told your friend, I got an interview, right? So you're excited, and you should be, right? Because it is exciting, and you've put in a lot of work already. And now this is how you feel, right? Uh-oh. It can be a very anxious time. You get worried. You start to think, how am I going to do in this interview? How is my English going to be? Who am I going to have to compete against? What do I do about this, right? It's important. Preparation is the key, okay? That's what you want to do. You want to prepare. Preparing for your interview will drop your anxiety level, will drop the nervousness, won't make it go away. I will tell you, I've been through interviews and I still get incredibly nervous. And most people do at the beginning. But the better prepared you are, the less nervous you'll be. Okay, so, and that nervousness usually turns to excitement once you get into the interview. But what do you do to prepare is the question. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, for any kind of a job interview, what steps should you be taking? Okay, so I have a whole lot of information I'd like to share with you, an awful lot. I will make these slides available to you at the end of the session, okay? So you don't have to be taking notes because there is a lot, but you've worked really hard already, and you can use a lot of the work that you've already done to be better prepared for the interview. So, in order to do well in an interview, you need to know yourself. You need to know the job that you are applying for, and you need to know about the organization that you are applying to. Now, as I said, the good news is a lot of that work, a lot of that research was done in the earlier stages of applying, okay? Knowing yourself, a lot of that work is done when you're putting together your resume. Knowing the job that you are applying for and the organization, you do some research while you're writing your cover letter, right? We were just talking about how in your cover letter, you don't just talk about the things that you think are great about yourself. you look at the job description and you try to match up what you see in the job description with what you know from your resume. Okay, so a lot of that work is already done, but you do need to expand it. So one of the things you have to be prepared to do in a job interview is you have to be prepared to talk about yourself, and you have to be prepared to talk about your strengths, all these really great things about yourself. Why are you good for this job? And honestly, that is not the easiest thing to do, okay? So I would like everybody right now to get a pen and a piece of paper. I'm guessing most of you are close to that, or you could even do it on your screen. And I want you to think about, I'm going to give you 15 seconds to think about 3 of your strengths, okay? Go. Just write them down. You don't have to share them with anybody else. Okay, 15 seconds is up. I know that's a pretty short period of time, but were you able to come up with 3 strengths? I was having a hard time coming up with 3 strengths of my own, honestly. I started to think, well, I'm a pretty good communicator. Well, sometimes, but you know, other people are better at it than I am. It's very difficult sometimes to talk about the things that you're good at, okay? Most people are challenged to do that. And in many cultures, we don't talk very much about things that we're good at, that we're better than other people at. So this is an area that I've suggested to people in the past. One thing that will oftentimes work is, as you're preparing for the job interview and to talk about the things that you're good at, imagine that you are helping a friend prepare, but that friend is you. And oftentimes, if you think about yourself in that context, it makes it much easier to think about your strengths and the abilities and the skills and the experiences that you want to share with someone. Because something that's very important to know about job interviews in Canada, and I think I would say in North America in general, is that you are expected to talk about all of the things that you are good at and things that you are better at than the average person. You have to be ready to compete with other people who are approaching it from that way, okay? So sometimes that takes a little bit of time to think about, okay? So one place that you can start to prepare for that is there is a website called Career Hub that is available to UWaterloo students. Okay, so careerhub.uwaterloo.ca. Again, I'll make these slides available to you, okay, so you can review them. But this is a place that you can go and you can look for a lot of additional information about searching for work, how to do it, how to approach it. We've had this short workshop, or we will have had it today. I know you had the resume workshop before, but that's just a beginning, right? So it's important that you know that there are additional resources available to you that can help you with this, okay? Not just now, but in the years as you continue on in your career at UWaterloo, okay? There's also an entire building called the Center for Career Action, okay, that you can go to and book appointments. Now, I know in some of your other classes, you may be talking about this, but I thought I would put these in here just to remind you that there will be help for you as the years carry on, okay? Specifically at the beginning, decision-making, knowing yourself, understanding what the value is of what you have to offer before you start applying for jobs can be very, very valuable, Okay, so I would encourage you at some point when you have some time to go into this website, and click into this area around decision making. Okay, and there are some self-assessments. Okay, and those assessments will help you identify what your interests are, what your values are, and it also helps you look at the language that's used. What words are used to describe different things? Okay, so because you will be seeing those words in job descriptions. Okay, so that's something I hope you check out at some point. Okay, but now let's go back to thinking about what can we learn about interviews right now. Okay, so let's remember that when you're in a job interview, the whole point is this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to connect on a human level, even if it's through a screen, with another human being to let them know that you are the person for that job. Okay, they've already seen your resume. Okay, so in your resume, you gave some examples of some capabilities. They already have seen your cover letter, so you expanded on some of those capabilities. But now you get to establish some credibility with them. You get to look them in the eye, even if it's only on screen, and you get to explain why you're good for the job. You get to make those connections that we talked about earlier, that Bethany mentioned, of what have you actually done that shows those skills, those math skills, and then some of those other skills like team building. So we need to think about did you demonstrate that? You can't just say, I did it. You have to show them. You have to tell them. And that's what the whole interview process is. The better prepared you are, the smoother it will go. Okay, so we know that in addition to the skills that are mentioned in the job description, there are many skills that that employers are often looking for. Okay, organizational skills, basic software skills, time management, analytical skills. Okay, these are very commonly necessary in many, many types of jobs. Employers are often looking for attributes. So what do you have as part of you? Are you hardworking, good at teamwork? Do you have a positive attitude? Do you learn quickly? All of these things are very important. And you want to show this to the interviewer while you're in that interview. So as you are explaining to them that you have those basic math skills to do that analyst job, you also want to integrate that you have a positive attitude. You want to tell them that sometimes when you've been working at developing those skills, it was frustrating, but you continued on. And this is how you continued on. And you give them examples. So let's talk a little bit more about those examples. Okay. You need to review the job description thoroughly so that you can relate your skills to the position. Okay. How do you do that? Well, you look at the job description and you look for keywords and you focus on important verbs. Okay. So this might be an example of a compliance analyst job duties. So this would be part of the job description. This lists the different things that this job entails. It's a lot, right? Look at that and think, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do all that. The chances are you can do all that, but you have to systematically go through each step and consider, well, can I do this? And how? How have I done this in the past? How can I tell them that I'm ready to do it? So, for instance, you take that first duty. researches regulations by reviewing regulatory bulletins and other sources of information. So researches is that key word. Do you have research skills that are needed? I bet you have developed research skills over time. Think about the things that you've done. Go back to your resume. Look at your resume. When have you done things that have demonstrated research skills? Can you think of a time when you used research skills that were effective and you produced something? Because that's what the interviewer wants to hear about, your own personal experience, but something very concrete, something very specific. Okay, so it takes a lot of work to prepare for an interview, but remember, the more work you put in before, the smoother it will be. So you want to go through the job duties and you want to highlight those key words, those important verbs, and you want to compare them with your resume and with what you know of your own experience and your own skills. Okay, and then what happens is you find that there are these skills and attributes. You can make a list. So now you know this is what they're looking for, people that have these skills. Okay, then you start to put together your description of yourself, okay? Of your own experiences and how you have used these in the past and demonstrated them. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Just hold that thought, okay? So that is really step one in preparing for the interview. Step one, step two. Step one, knowing yourself. Step two, knowing the position. There is also a step three about knowing the organization. You don't have to know everything about the organization, but you do need to know some things. You need to do some research, okay? Again, you've probably already done some of that research to put together the cover letter, right? You want to learn a little bit about the company's culture. What does the company think is important? And usually the best place to look online is the company website. Look at the About Us or Our History, or sometimes it even says Our Values. And it will tell you what that company or organization thinks is important. Because it's a very common question in a job interview for the interviewer to say, so what do you know about our company? And you want to be able to say something that shows, number one, that you have researched that, and number two, that it aligns, that it connects with something that you believe in, that is the reason that you are applying for this job. So, interview. You want to look at the organization's values, mission statement, so that you're prepared if they ask you, what do you know about our company? Text just disappeared there. Okay. So oftentimes companies will have slogans or sayings or values or mission statements on their website that will give you an idea. Okay. And you want to be able to say, I am too committed to healthier children and a better world. And I'm so committed to that I have actually done volunteer work in the past at a hospital. And it's one of the reasons that I'm very committed to applying for this job. Okay, you want to make those connections. All right, how am I doing on time here? Okay, so In your resume, in your cover letter, you've highlighted a lot of the skills. In the interview, you now want to focus their attention on the fact that you can demonstrate those skills, right? So we've talked about doing that research, looking for those keywords, looking for those important verbs in the description, trying to think about your own experience and how you're going to demonstrate that. That's a lot to remember, right? It definitely is. However, you will have the opportunity to share that information in the questions that will be asked in the interview. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what are some common questions that you can anticipate that are asked in many, many interviews, so you can prepare. Classic questions. Tell me about yourself. Or what are your short-term goals? Well, what about in 2.5 to 5 years? What motivates you to do a good job? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? These are considered classic questions because they're often asked at the very beginning of a job interview, okay? They're asked to what we call break the ice. So that's an expression we use in English to basically, the interviewer knows that you are kind of nervous, right? Because everybody's nervous at the beginning of an interview. And they want to give you the opportunity to get relaxed, sit up nice and straight, right? We've always talked about posture and our body language, okay? So this is the part where you've come in, you've sat down if it's a face-to-face interview, or if it's on screen, you are getting your camera situated properly so that we don't see a huge piece of ceiling here, right? We've talked about this a lot in our class together. This is the part where you have the opportunity to talk a little bit about yourself. Again, be prepared for these questions and relate them to things that you've seen in the job interview, or sorry, in the job description, okay? So, when you give answers to these questions, somebody says, tell me about yourself. Well, you might be 20 years old. How much would you like to know, right? That can take a long time. Remember, most answers to questions in a job interview should be no longer than 90 seconds. So they should be fairly short, and they should always be relevant to the job. So when you go into a job interview, be prepared to answer the question, tell me about yourself, and think about how you can relate that to the job. So usually it's things like, how did you become interested in the field of math? Do you have some experience that's related to that job? Do you know somebody who's done that kind of a job before? Have you heard about that type of job? Have you taken courses that are very directly related to that job? So you want to talk about those things when somebody says, tell me a little bit about yourself, okay? Or why did you apply for this job? In about 90 seconds. And this is something you can practice, okay? You don't want to memorize it, but you do want to be ready, to be prepared, and to be practiced. Now, as I've said, oftentimes it's difficult to remember all of that, right? When you're asked a question like that, many people use this tactic or this strategy called pause to help them remember, okay? So that stands for profile, academic, work, and skills, okay? So profile will talk about how you became interested in the field, and it may point to any relevant community involvement, some personal interests. So it talks about just sort of a very general way that you as a person became interested in this field and in this job. And then we want to think about, okay, P profile, and then academic, school, right? So what's your educational background that relates to this position or to this company? Have you had any work, paid work or volunteer work that relates to this job? And finally, do you have some skills that relate to the job, some very technical skills, like project management or some particular software that you know is used in the position? Okay? And you can even talk about some more general skills, time management skills or problem solving skills. But the idea is to use the opportunity when you are asked a very general question, like, tell me a bit about yourself, to focus in on the particular job and the skills that are required. Because right away, you will be telling the interviewer, I have what you need. Okay. The second kind of questions that are often asked in a job interview are called behavior-based interview questions. Okay. And they are considered to be more valid predictors of on-the-job performance. Okay. So instead of just asking, are you good at time management? Because of course you're going to say yes. They may ask, tell me about a time when you were challenged to complete an assignment. Or give me an example of, describe a situation in which. So you have to give more information about something specific. Okay. Again, this is a difficult thing to remember, all of the details that you want to give. But you will be able to do that. Remember, you want to tell them that you have the skills, you have the experience, and that you have shown that in the past, because that's what they want to know. So tell me about a time you had to complete a task under a tight deadline. Or have you ever gone above and beyond the call of duty? Now that's an expression that's used in English to mean, have you done more than was expected? And what they really want to know is, can you take initiative? So do you do a little bit extra? We've talked a lot about what team playing, right? What do you do when a team member refuses to complete his or her part of the work? Okay. So these are the kinds of questions you may be asked. Okay. Now, if you look at these questions, they seem very much like the kinds of questions you would get as an assignment, right, in a class. You think, oh, how am I going to remember all of the things I need to tell them in the interview if I'm asked this question? Okay. There is another way to help you remember, and that is called STAR. Okay. S stands for situation, T stands for task, A stands for action, and R stands for result. So let's talk a bit more about that. So you are asked one of these very behavioral-based general questions. And you think, okay, I need to describe S for situation. Describe the context when you face this challenge. Okay, so what was the situation? It can be a work experience, a volunteer experience, it can be a school experience, but it needs to be specific and it needs to be brief. So for instance, an experience like I was working on a group project, okay, and you had conflict with another member. How did you resolve that? Okay. Next, you want to think about describing the task. So, what was your responsibility in that situation? Okay. Example, you had to help your group complete a project with a tight deadline. Okay. So that was the task, that was the challenge. Action. You want to let them know what you did. Describe how you completed that task. How did you meet the challenge? And in this situation, you want to talk about the action that you did, not what other people did, but what did you do? Okay. And finally, you want to describe the result. Explain the outcome. What was the result of your action? What was accomplished? Or what did you learn? So that idea of STAR, situation, task, action, and result, will help you remember to hit on those different points to explain how you have been very good in the past in managing your time or in meeting a challenge. And that makes sure that you are comprehensively explaining to your interviewer what they're looking for. Okay, so let's look at a couple things. Yes, remember 90 seconds is about the time, which I know it sounds like it's hard to get all that information into 90 seconds, but you can do it if you think about describing the situation, the task, the action, the result. Okay. So, for an example, tell me about a time you had to complete a task under a tight deadline. Describe the situation and explain how you handled it. This could be a question asked in an interview. Okay. This is the kind of answer that you could give that fully explains to the interviewer. While I typically like to plan my work out in stages and complete it piece by piece, I can also achieve strong work under a tight deadline. So once at a former company, an employee left days before the big project of his was due. I was asked to take it over with only a few days to learn about and complete the project. And I created a task force, I delegated work, and we all completed the assignment with a day to spare. And I think I tend to thrive under tight deadlines. Now, this was an answer given by someone who had work experience before, okay? Someone who had worked different co-op jobs before. This exact kind of answer could be given by a student, okay, that had worked on an assignment in the same situation. Okay, so you don't have to have had work experience to be able to call on past experiences to demonstrate your skills. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, so an interviewer might ask, what do you do when a team member refuses to complete his or her portion of the work? So when there are team conflicts or issues, I always try my best to step up as team leader if needed. I think my communication skills make me an effective leader and moderator. For example, I was once working on a team project and two of the team members got into an argument, both refusing to complete their assignments. They were both dissatisfied with their workloads, so I arranged a team meeting where we rearranged the assignments for the team. This made everyone a bit happier and a bit more productive, and our project was a success. Okay, so here they've described the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And all of this can be said in less than 90 seconds. So the interviewer is still listening, okay? And you've demonstrated it very clearly. There's a very good possibility that you've had this kind of experience in your life as a student. What you want to do is think about it before the job interview so that you can prepare to answer the question in a brief but full way. And that's where that preparation comes in, okay? Before I go on, I've been talking an awful lot, everybody. Can I ask, does anybody have any questions? Okay, I will finish up with the final part of the job interview, where you are oftentimes given the opportunity to ask questions of the interviewer, okay? So this is very common, again, in Canadian interviews. At the end of an interview, they will ask, do you have any questions? They do want to know if you have questions, okay? Just like in our classes together, a lot of the instructors are always saying, do you have questions? We really do want you to ask questions if you have them, okay? Interviewers also want you to ask questions because in interviewing culture in Canada, asking questions shows the interviewer that you're interested in the job, and it shows them that you have a little bit of enthusiasm and knowledge for the position, okay? It shows that you've probably done a little bit of research about the job and that you've been listening to them throughout the interview. Okay. It's also an opportunity at the very end of the interview to be able to remind them that you are a good candidate for this job. Okay. So you can do that by asking genuine questions that you are generally interested in, okay? But questions that align with the organization's culture. So it matches up with their culture in their organization, what they think is important, and what you also think is important as a person. So for instance, if you've noticed that the company talks a lot about collaborative work, supportive work, team building, okay? It is appropriate to ask a question at the end like, does the organization support any team sports for their employees? Okay? Because that shows that you are interested in team sports, which usually indicates you're a team player, okay? Or you can ask a question like, what is the most essential trait a new team member should possess and why? Okay, because that will give them the opportunity to tell you what they think is one of the most essential traits. And you may be able to respond by indicating to them that you do have that trait and maybe give an example of that. Or you can ask a question like, what training opportunities do you have for your employees? Will there be some pre-training, on-the-job training, industry or in-house training? And when you ask that question, what you are doing is you are demonstrating that you understand that you will still have to learn a lot once you start that job, and that you're interested in learning and that that's something that you want, okay? What you don't want to do is ask questions about things like salary, the amount of money you will make. Usually, that isn't a question that is discussed in the first interview or in co-op interviews. Oftentimes, it will be indicated on your job description, or it can be discussed if you are offered the job. Okay. But it's generally not talked about in co-op interviews. Okay. As well, things like extra things that are available to you if you receive the job. It's usually best not to ask those questions in the job interview. Ask those questions. How much vacation do I get? Things like that. Ask that if you are offered the job. Okay. Okay. All right, everybody. I've been talking at you for a really long time. And I would now like to open it up to some questions, comments.
Georgina, I have a comment. That was
Yes.
amazing. That was so useful. And those slides are beautiful. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Well,
wow.
I hope it's useful. And I know everybody, like I said, I've talked and nobody's camera is on. So I don't know if you're asleep out there, and I would understand because I know it's late at night for a lot of you. But I tried to work really hard to make those slides good because I'm hoping that you'll go back and you'll look at them later. Because I know for all of you, you're in my class. I know you have lots of assignments right now. You have your math readiness course you have to do. You have so many things to think about. But one day, and maybe one day soon, you are going to be looking at preparing for a job. And when you do, you will have that template that Bethany gave you, and you will have these slides to look at, and you will have that reference to go to Career Hub, okay, that can help you expand. Because I know that this whole process is very challenging, okay? It is really challenging for everybody. You know, adults, people, professionals that have been working in fields for years and years are very challenged when they start looking for new jobs and go through the whole process. As a matter of fact, it's very common these days for professionals to hire coaches to help them put together their resume, to prepare them for a job interview, okay? But if you can't hire a coach, you can go back and look at Bethany's template and the information from the resume workshop and these slides, okay?
Yeah, and I want to add to that that you don't, speaking of coaches, you actually have coaches that you've already paid for through your tuition. So at the Center for Career Action, as Georgina showed you, there are things you can use online, like a lot of things about how to write a resume and cover letter, but you can also go and actually have a practice interview. So they test it with you, then they can give you a bit of feedback on what you did well or not. So you've paid for that already through your tuition. So I highly recommend you use it. Yes, Allison just put that link in the chat. So if you want to save that for yourself, that's an amazing resource. And in that case, you don't have to have any private coaching until you're outside of university. So use it while you have it. Yeah, so practicing, that would be for me the thing I would say the most. Practice that interview, not just in a formal setting, but even with a friend, even on your own in the mirror, like just practice saying those things, because then you can get all the I don't know out of the way, which I do a lot when I practice. And then hopefully once it actually happens in the real one, it's easier to say what you want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. That practice piece is so crucial. And it will help you dispel some of that nervousness and anxiety, which is natural. But when you've practiced it, it's so much, oh, sorry, I just saw it, distracted there. It is so much easier if you've practiced it. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I just want to add something. Well, I guess from my point of view as a recent graduate, the START method, it's actually really, really useful. And it's something that you're going to go back to and practice a lot. And just going back to the result part, it's really important for you to highlight that there was an outcome and it went well. Because it's not only showing that you've been in that position and in that situation, but also that you thrive and you actually got a good outcome out of it. Because that's the part that is showing that you're good at it, right? Not only going through the experience, but also just having a good result after all. So I just wanted to make that comment, because it is something that for me, it was really, really useful when I was in interviews for my co-op. And it was something that I applied a lot, and I still have it here. And my roommates, sometimes they practice with me because they're still in university. And whenever they have an interview and I'm like, think of like the situation, what was the action you needed to do and how it went, right? So it is a really useful part, I will say.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, it does help you remember because there's so much going through your mind, right? So you need those little things to help you remember. Yeah. Okay. I think that everybody, I'm sort of seeing some, oh, sorry about that. I should check that chat there. Okay. I have an activity that I think maybe Allison, Cece, could I pass along to everybody and make it available along with the slides that maybe the students might want to look at doing later on at some point when they have some time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We have recorded this, so it will be available on the hub on Learn. So I can add in your slides and everything else as well for that.
Great, great, good.
I'm also sharing with you guys in the chat a link for the Center for Career Action. They have a specific website for workshops that they've recorded, so similar to this ones, and you can go back to those and like watch it on your own time or your own pace whenever you need. But they have a lot of specific, like what type of questions they ask in an interview, how to like write a cover letter and things like that. So just additional support there.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. So you can take all of this information and you can put it into a folder that you can go back and reference later on. Okay, because I know that many of you are interested in co-op. So if you begin the co-op program, you'll definitely want to take a look at it, or when you get closer to the end of your career.
I want to say thank you to all of you for staying up late, for a lot of you, and just joining us. This is really, really amazing. And it's really going to help you as you prepare for whatever jobs that you want, whether it's part-time or co-op or anything like that.
Yes, thank you, everybody, because I do know that you're all scrambling to get prepared for your discipline and career assignment later this week. So I'm glad you took the time away from that to come to this today. I appreciate it.
And thank you to Georgina and Bethany too for doing this great workshop. It had a lot of useful information for students. So thank you so much for coming in today too.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, it was lovely. And look at us, 6 minutes or 5 minutes before the deadline or finishing. So that's great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your messages in the chat. That's lovely. And I hope you have a great night or a great rest of your day, depending on where you are in the world.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Day. Bye.